Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. We are approaching 100 episodes. It's a big milestone. Thank you so much for subscribing. Please don't forget to follow us on Spotify if you haven't done so yet. And please give us a 5-star rating on Spotify because it makes a huge impact to the show. And if you're on YouTube, you can find us on there as well. We really appreciate you tuning in and we really appreciate the support. Today, I spoke to Frank Sondors, who is the CEO and co-founder of SalesForge, which is an all-in-one sales execution platform which acts as an AI co-pilot for sales teams. So if you're interested in AI agents, make sure you listen through to the whole of the show. He's a really interesting guy. SalesForge enables AI-driven sales execution, and it helps teams big and small to enhance messages and drive superior conversions. Frank is a relentless doer who thrives on challenges in predictive intelligence, demand gen, and monetization. I talked to Frank about basically how you can integrate AI agents into your cold outreach. And really importantly, we speak about how great software at the moment and great tools enable human beings, enable teams, and don't just replace them. So let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I already had a few coffees, and just prior to this, you've seen me drinking my Monster, so definitely getting into the swing of things because, after, and doing this session with you, I'm doing my demos or whatever else I'm doing in this business. So, yeah.
Great. Good to have you on. So we're speaking about all things AI agents. Now, they're making a big impact. A lot of companies are using them more and more. It does seem to be on an administration basis in many ways, and some companies are using it internally. But how do you feel companies can apply using AI agents in the sales process?
Good question. So when you talk about that, the admin tasks, so we have a bunch of admin tasks, so ourselves. So for that, for example, we're using custom, let's call it build or custom solutions, sort of, which are sit on top of automation platforms. For example, that could be make.com, or in our case, we use N8N. So within that, you can build a bunch of workflows and apply agentic capabilities. So example could be, one example that I typically like to mention, because, we're in the business of, sending emails and receiving emails. So for example, if I do have an email that lands in my spam folder and say that's a cold email, so you could kind of really push that email into N8N for that, to use that as a context. Then you can ask the agent, hey, is this a cold email or not? And then if it is, then you do essentially fire back an email saying, hey, thanks for the email. It looks like it landed in spam. And here's a way potentially how you could solve your problem, right? So that's an example of where you can use sort of a custom solution to build something custom, can have a workflow, and then have the AI agent in the loop. And it's an administrative sort of task, and there's a bunch of other tasks. So you could apply that for invoices or anything else like notifications in Slack and all that jazz. Now, there's other type of agents, in my eyes, which is what I call off-the-shelf solutions. So you go to a website, you install that literally super fast, and then off you go, right? So, and you could do that in sales or customer success and a bunch of probably other areas as well. But particularly in sales, we have our own agent. So what the agent does, the goal of that agent is to help you build pipeline autonomously. What that means is, you set your ICP, then against the ICP, so ICP means ideal customer profile, for those that are not aware. Then you set that ICP, so that ideal customer profile that you're going after, then we can source the leads for the customer, or the customer provide their own list. Then what we do is we compute what we call a unique email. So that means it's sort of uniquely sort of crafted or programmatically sort of computed, in other terms, where we provide the relevant context, so that to ensure that email is personalized and relevant to every single individual in the language of the user's choice, or it could be in the language of the recipient, because we can see languages and what languages users do speak based on publicly available information. So one data set is what we call the seller data. So what is it that you're selling? What's your value prop? And there's a lot of information that goes into that. And so we combine that seller data with what we call potential buyer data. So the buyer data, what do we know about each and every recipient based on publicly available information? So that's, for example, what do we see on the website about this company, where they work at? What do we see on the web about this individual? What do we see on social media platforms like a LinkedIn profile of that individual? What do we know about them? What's their current title? What are they doing? What's in their about section? So, for example, you mentioned something about me that you pulled, for example, from my about section. You know, so I would pull that just programmatically, right? So making sure I'm trying to latch on something that's interesting about the individual.
Can I ask you, Frank? So, do you tailor a personal message for every individual email that goes out? So, one person gets one email.
No, actually, they get several emails. So it's in the form of campaign or a sequence. So that means every email in that sequence is uniquely computed to that individual.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, one person can get 3 emails, but the first email they get is entirely unique to them.
Actually, every email, including the follow-up emails, that are also unique to the individual.
And is that to then overcome the 2 challenges, which is one, that it lands in spam if it's been one email sent to 1,000 people, the same email.
Yes.
That's what challenge number 1. And challenge number 2 is getting them to open the email, and I guess challenge number 3 is to get them to respond to the email.
Exactly. So the baseline challenge. So a lot of people think, oh, it's about personalized emails, etc. But no, actually, it's about what's called email deliverability, which is the first pain that we were solving as a business when we were born 20 plus months ago. So we're just doing that really well. Back then, we were computing the emails as well, but the computations have become so much better. And yes, we did roll out then several months ago also our own AI agent to ensure that we're doing it also fully autonomously to reduce the pressure from a sort of labor standpoint. So deliverability is the first thing, because what's the point of great emails? What's the point of AI agents if the emails land in spam, right? So you really need to solve the first problem. The first problem is do they actually land in the primary? Because if they don't, nothing really matters. So we've solved that, and then naturally the second part is making sure that we are maximizing the probability of receiving a reply. And there's a lot of things that you need to do from the perspective of crafting a really great email. The another perspective is making sure we're targeting the right people. Then things like the right time of the day or the day of the week to send that email.
I'm just curious. What is there an example of a great time of day or great day of the week to send an email? Just curious in the sector. Have you seen any patterns?
So we did see patterns that it's very actually, so we don't do yet sort of what we call industry level analysis. So that's really the best way to do it, and also to do that by country. So that's something that we're looking to do in the future. But right now, for example, sending an email on the Friday is a really bad call because a lot of people take Fridays off, etc. So there's a performance hit.
Okay.
But I personally sort of recommend, and also from the data that I was seeing, that the best days to send is sort of Tuesday to Thursday. In any industry, etc. The reason for that is because Mondays are pretty heavy in terms of meetings, etc.
Of course,
right. So people are just busy, just generally. Then Tuesdays are sort of becoming easier days, and then Fridays people take off or whatever. Right? So Friday is also a really bad day, and that is also supported by data internally that we have. However. You can also look at other data sets. So what are those? So for example, you can look at traffic patterns on different websites in the world, and you can see that the traffic massively increases for different websites from Tuesday to Thursday in particular. And a lot of websites. So that means people are in their jobs. They just have more time on their hands to do different things, including checking emails. So if somebody asked me, Frank, without machine learning or anything, what's the best time to send? I would say try and send from Tuesdays to Thursdays to maximize, again, results there. But so from a kind of generative AI standpoint, yes, we compute these emails in any language. So every subject line is unique.
Right.
And we typically latch on the data of the buyer, and typically it's somewhere between 2 to 5 words that we compute. So you need to give that sort of playing field for the generative AI to try and come up with something that's would be of interest. Because other people typically say, okay, the best subject lines are 2-word subject lines, and that makes sense if you are not using any form of AI.
But if you're just sending a generic message out, right? Very simple thing. So what do you see what have you seen in a real world example gets a really good reply rate? Because we can't track open rates anymore in cold email, right? It's high risk. You can do it, but it's high risk. But what sort of reply rates can you receive on a list of, let's say, 500 people?
So I typically say statistical significance starts with about 1,000 people on the list.
Okay.
And yes, so they really, depending on the list, you're going to see really different results. But I think for agentic capabilities, let's say on our end, we see typically for now just email only. Take that into account. So email only, 2 to 3% reply rates. That does exclude out of offices, and then out of that, we typically see 10 to 20% positive reply rate. So up to essentially 1 in 5 individuals positive replies back to you with agentic capabilities on average. Now, what will happen is once you introduce other channels, actually like LinkedIn, we typically see at least an extra percentage point on top of that. So we're talking about now, 3 to 4%, reply rates, because naturally people also do respond on LinkedIn. And of course, then when you add to the equation VoIP, so the ability to call again, because ultimately multi-channel, does drive up the conversion rate, just general response from the prospect. But yeah, as I mentioned as well, that there's a bit of a challenge with the AI agents and sort of cold calling, right? So from an agentic standpoint, you can only do that safely in the world of email. So that's outbound plus inbound, also social, but the typical channels there is LinkedIn and WhatsApp, for example. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, because we connected on LinkedIn. Perfect,
Yes.
right? And then we spoke about it briefly before we started the podcast. I totally agree with you with the multi-channel approach. It makes so much sense. And if you can go there with a targeted approach, great quality data, make sure that you're hitting the inbox, make sure that you're making a good connection, that makes sense. And if you can integrate calling into it, the cold calling or let's just call it outbound calling, because cold calling has a really negative connotation. That has to be done at the moment, probably by a human being for the first instance, right? But if they opt in, they can receive a call from an AI agent.
Yeah, so for example, we're even thinking internally because we don't do any form of voice agents, but what we're not doing yet on the agentic front, because we're all about AI agents, internally, etc. But within the go-to-market process, so everything's agentic on the outbound front. Plus, we do have 3 reps, that we are using in tandem with the AI agents. So we're big believers that's how you really maximize pipeline coverage. But yeah, on the inbound front, even though everything is like super, thought out, but everything's rules based on inbound. So we don't use any form of agentic capabilities. So what is really missing are the voice agents. So, so we are a PLG business. So that means majority of the interactions with customers, like they don't really take place, right? We want them to transact, during the trial phase of 7 days that we have, or later. And if that doesn't happen, so my thought process is I should be applying voice agents, let's say, post trial phase, and that's a fantastic opportunity. I think everybody should be doing this if you're collecting phone numbers. So I'm collecting phone numbers on the sign up. And typically, one thing that I do, which is rules-based, which runs on N8N automation, is just a rules-based, hey, this is Frank. If you got any questions, let me know. And that's it, And if the person replies back, then we will reply back. And yes, you can apply an AI agent on that as well. We're not doing that yet. Because AI agents are really nice when you have, a lot of volume, right? And you're struggling, right? And you're struggling to answer on time, so like speed. So on an inbound, 3 things matter. Leads, process, and speed. And everybody knows about the leads and the process part, but a lot of companies forget how crucial it is to have an SLA of 2 minutes on inbound to respond to every lead and making sure we're trying to book them in. Super important. The reason why this is important, why speed is so important today, is because let's say in our category, we have like hundreds of competitors, and what you're doing is if you are very fast and speedy, you're providing that sort of sales support, then you're pushing that user down the funnel ultimately, and the user doesn't even check out the competitors or anything like that because they really enjoy the experience. They like the product, they like the service, and off they go, they just buy that. And I bet, if somebody has been in sales, somebody has been closing deals, it does happen to you where, the customer says, hey, listen, this has been fantastic. I didn't even look at other solutions, but I'm happy with everything that I'm seeing, and I'm going to go ahead because people can't be also bothered to do their, due diligence, checking out the other tools, etc. Right? So,
right, they're too busy. Yeah, they're too busy. You say there's a lot of companies in the space. Where do you see it like heading in the future? I mean, you're seeing 10% reply rates on campaigns. That's very positive sign, right? You're doing a highly targeted approach on messaging, and then you're scaling it further.
Yes.
There's the other companies doing this as well, but it's an exciting time. It feels like the more companies that come into the market, the faster the market will grow. Or do you think that there's just going to be a few key winners and things will change quite quickly?
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesForge, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
I think there's a lot of companies that are definitely entering, or have entered, are entering, and there will be more that will enter this market. Because we're gonna see this what we call shake up in this market. So everybody's trying to, to go after this disruption. So the disruption essentially is that you have a lot of legacy companies in this category, essentially provide execution capabilities, but they have designed the whole software and the architecture of the software around bigger teams, more headcount, more CAC, And guess what? We don't live in the world where we want to have more humans in different organizations. No, we live in a world we want to be lean and mean. So that means you have to orchestrate a software, or in our case, multiple softwares to help to reduce the pressure of hiring more reps. And that's a very different, type of software. So yes, and there's a lot of companies that pop up, let's say in the Bay Area, on the agentic front, and they're doing a fantastic job. But what they are also doing at the same time, which I think is a fatal error, is they are discounting the humans in full. Right? But discounting the humans in full is a really bad idea. So because what will end up happening is you will end up essentially using one software for humans, which are essentially the legacy softwares, right? So a lot of them are human-only based softwares. And then you're going to use another software, agentic software, for the agentic stuff. But if you're really a smart leader, you kind of think to yourself, why am I using these two platforms to generate my pipeline? Typically, you execute in one platform, right? So this is why, for example, in our case, we're big believers that you have to blend these two capabilities. And I typically always bring it up an example, which essentially it's like a Google Ads account. So in the Google Ads, you've got these campaigns which run on manual bidding. So these are essentially human-based campaigns. And then several years ago, the automated campaigns popped up where you can literally set your target CPA in Google Ads, and then Google optimized the bids for you to try and reach that target CPA or X number of conversions, right? So they use machine learning essentially. But you can think about sort of this way, because in our case, we send these great emails, which are, uniquely computed. Then if a prospect replies back, then the AI agent has a conversation back and forth. But we're always setting a goal for the AI agent, just like in Google Ads, which is, hey, we want to book a meeting. Here's the calendar link. Here's the HubSpot calendar link, or we want to ask for the meeting link from the prospect. That's actually converts much better. So a little tip here. Or some companies actually, like, in our case, there are some companies that are PLG companies that don't do any meetings whatsoever. What you can do is you can still use the AI agent to drive the demand or the traffic to a site. So you can ask the AI agent for a click out. That is also very powerful. So imagine, that's not a way to drive demand, because all these PLG companies believe, let me just spend some money with Google Ads or do a bunch of other things. But you could also use the agent to say, hey, if you're interested in this, here's the link, and go and start your trial process, right?
Let's go back there, because I think you made a very valid point, is that there is the concern and the dream of a lot of companies to replace the human interaction altogether in a sales process, right? I spoke to someone and they said, one day you're not going to have any people involved in a sales process, right? I think, maybe a long way ahead, and, it would be for, very certain things. When Google implemented those changes where they had like machine learning, bidding, etc., that you could use, it was seen as a tool, but you still have to go in and, it has to be managed. And I think that's what sounds quite interesting with SalesForge, is that you're still keeping in mind the human communication and human interaction. It is a tool to help, and then teams can be leaner and meaner. And then the end goal can be whatever the company wants, right? It could be an opt-in, it could be a meeting link, it could be a demo, it could be a video, it could be anything like that, right?
Yeah, whatever conversion is. It's like in Google Analytics, right? You set up that goal event, right? And what's it worth? We're doing exactly that, right? So it's the same sort of kind of thought process. And so my belief is you can't really replace the human in full, because intrinsically humans want to do business with other humans, right? So that means account execs and their jobs, in my opinion, are safe, because at the end of the day, when I will want to buy a piece of software, I want to speak to somebody, because I'm not just buying that piece of software or renting that piece of software. I'm also renting the team. on the other end, and I want to qualify what's, you need to qualify. And a lot of people will go on LinkedIn and will check out, what's the founding team, etc. So we run a little community on WhatsApp, and somebody's asking me, hey guys, what do you think about this software? And I just went on LinkedIn, and you can see a lot of bots, literally a lot of bots on that company. It's like, this looks very scammy, right? And that's exactly, what the typical human will do the due diligence. One is like jumping on a call, having a real chat with the people on the other end. The other one is like checking LinkedIn, see if there's a bunch of bots on there. Right. So that,
I see a lot of stuff. We check out all the tools, and there's so much crap out there, and there's so much stuff going on. It's all smoke and mirrors. But you mentioned something there that I'd like to pick up on. That sounds pretty cool. So you started up a little WhatsApp community.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Is that something you just did off the cuff, or something that's part of your marketing plan?
So on WhatsApp, so we're big believers in that you can build really big business only with community in mind, meaning that you will have this sort of community of individuals that really support you, really drive the brand forward.
You can superfans, basically, right? The superfan process.
Yes. So, and then there are companies in the space that do it super well, like Clay.com, for example.
Yeah.
We're also their big fans. They do really great, fantastic job, really great brand, really well thought out, right? And they build this sort of super fans around their business. Now, when it comes to kind of building that part of the superfans, we have our own Slack community, right? And this is where you can congregate a lot of people, right? And this typically has to do something with your product, because you talk a lot about your product, or people should ask questions to each other. But for me, the WhatsApp community has nothing to do with my company. It's more of we're just discussing how to generate pipeline. It's not about AI agents, nothing like that. People just within the sales process, the biggest, the most difficult part that I'm typically arguing is the pipeline generation part. That's the most difficult. Like, generating demand for your business is super difficult. So I thought to myself, there's a lot of people share, content on LinkedIn, etc. But then that content disappears, etc. People don't really talk to each other about that. And really, if you want to have the highest activity, like, people talking to each other about the same stuff, like generating pipeline and asking each other's questions, the best place to do that is WhatsApp. And the reason why WhatsApp has the highest engagement rate, because guess what? You pick up your phone, you're on the bus, whatever, you're in the loo maybe, you're texting each other, and that's why you're just going to see always the highest engagement rate. And it has to be also, very unofficial, right? So it's not like,
it's not a spam, it's not a sales message, it's not a marketing message, it's a conversation. But that's a really good one, because that's where you have a great opportunity to build a community of superfans. Like, just thinking out loud here, right? This podcast is our community, something that I wanted to do for years, then just started doing it, and then it's built up. And we have superfans, like my friends and my old work colleagues and my old clients. They WhatsApp me saying, "Oh, I love that podcast. That was really cool." Yes. So, you as an entrepreneur and founder have given me an idea, like, hey, you should probably do like a community for what we're doing, and get people talking, right? Get people talking and sharing ideas. And then that group of people becomes a superfan. And then,
because I believe LinkedIn is not the place for that, and neither that's X. And the reason why LinkedIn is not the place for that is because LinkedIn is very political. Let's call it that way,
Well, big time,
people don't really have proper conversations, let's call it that way. I haven't seen...
They just shout at each other, right?
Yeah, people promoting things in blah, blah, blah. It's very political. And if you really want people to have a proper raw conversation, that does happen on WhatsApp typically. Right, because what's the other environment? It is really WhatsApp, because people don't feel under pressure, nobody's watching them. Yes, there's other people in the WhatsApp group, but they don't realize there's hundreds of people in the WhatsApp group, but everybody's talking about the same stuff, and you can be like really open. It's not like your customers maybe are on there, let's say if you're an agency or something, I don't know. Or it's not like your boss is watching you on LinkedIn, and things like that. This is why you want to hide in the WhatsApp group and have, speak to other people that have similar problems, right? So I think, uniting people around similar problems is super powerful. Right. So this is why you should just create a community. And let's say now community are discussing my competitors. I suggest my competitors, things like that. And just, totally I probably wouldn't do that on LinkedIn as an example, but I would do that in WhatsApp, where I say, listen, we're just not really good for this. Just check out my competitor. They do that. And it's fine. I pass, a lead to your competitor. Maybe they're going to, pay the favor back. But that's something that you would do just in WhatsApp, just, what I call, very nice, that's, good business etiquette sort of,
Yeah, it's it's sharing and caring, and it's sharing information with like-minded people. And I guess these communities don't have to be super huge. I've joined some really great Slack communities, but what I found is that sometimes people got in there and they just started spamming, and that's just a little bit annoying, isn't it? But done some great business from Slack communities. I think, you can build communities in so many other ways. It's definitely a powerful tool. Brilliant. Frank, as you say, time flies when you're having fun. That's coming towards the end of the podcast, but it's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you today. People can find you on salesforge.ai. And if you connect with the team there at SalesForge, they're going to be super fast to deal with your inquiry. And you're probably going to be speaking with an absolutely brilliant AI sales agent. And then you can book a meeting with a real person, right, Frank?
Yes.
Awesome.
You'll get everything from us. An email, WhatsApp message, LinkedIn. We'll show you we'll give you the whole spiel on inbound stuff. So yeah.
And one last thing, the big shout out for Tallinn and the European Union, because you are an EU-based startup. You're all based out of Tallinn, right?
Yes.
Amazing. Yes. So not in Silicon Valley, in Europe. So I'm looking forward to an invitation, because it's been on my list for a very long time to go to Tallinn.
Well, you should attend the #1 conference there called Latitude 59. Actually, this is pretty cool. It could be, you could even call it a holiday, really, because a lot of cool people just hang there once a year. So yeah, highly recommend for anybody, really. Just if you're wondering if you want to go to a weird spot in Europe, that's Tallinn, and the best time to go there is when a lot of sort of tech geeks sort of congregate once a year, and that happens in May. So yeah,
Latitude 59 in May. I will take the podcast there with me. I've got a DJI mic too. They should probably sponsor the show. I'll take this with me. Frank, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.